The floors and walls of Wendell's trailer were booming with music. He didn't much need to worry about how much sound he was making at his New Year's Eve party, because he owned most of the trailer park. Nobody could complain. Wendell had just got a new shipment of this amazing stuff from his cartel. He got the deal of a lifetime when the cartel guy offered to give him the first batch completely free for just an hour of time with his beautiful 16-year-old stepdaughter, Ariana. The cartel man, named Don Carlos, explained to Wendell that at 16 in Mexico, a young girl was considered a woman and often married off. At least back in the day, that was the tradition. Wendell's cartel connect, Don Carlos, wasn't exactly the kind of guy you said no to. Wendell's trailer was a super wide, with 5 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms, and a huge covered outside porch and back patio. Plenty of yard space. And there were plenty of people here on New Year's Eve. Jason had just returned with his girlfriend Samantha, and the 2 girls that helped clean out Jason's trailer, May and Ashley, who went with him to Flagstaff for Samantha's sister's wedding. Wendell paused and eyed them up and down, remembering how much fun they'd all been having over the past week. But tonight was going to be even more epic. It was New Year's Eve, plus it was the apocalypse. And Wendell, just like everyone else, had heard news that nukes had struck the airspace over the U.S., being high out of his mind on this new batch of stuff, he just chuckled maniacally at the news. His power was still on, and the guests were still arriving. He poured out some blue powder from a little baggie, and everyone near him gathered around him in the kitchen. Using a credit card, he split some lines and bent to snort the first one, clearing the long blue line in one go. He threw down the short straw, grabbing the nearest woman next to him, a young beauty with blonde hair. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "New Year's Eve apocalypse party, come and get some of this, motherfuckers!" He beat his chest with one hand as he shouted his wild declaration. Just then, he felt a hand grip him strongly on the arm, pulling at him. When Teresa found out about this little deal Wendell had put together with Don Carlos, it snapped her out of the trance this new stuff had put her in, and her heart was racing. Ariana, or as everyone else called her, Ari for short, was an absolute recluse. When Wendell had parties like this, Ari would usually lock her door and hide in her bedroom. Her motherhood instincts overriding, she reached out, grabbing Wendell by the arm. Teresa dragged him away from the fun he was having in the kitchen. She took him to the hallway and hissed ferociously, "What do you mean Don Carlos wanted to have an hour with Ari? Where the fuck is she, Wendell? Who are you to agree to something like this? That's my daughter, you bastard!" "Lower your voice, woman!" Wendell grabbed both of her arms and shook her viciously. He said, "Don Carlos is like royalty in Mexico. He isn't the kind of man you say no to. So what if he asked for an hour with Ari? He told me that he could take Ari on a little cruise in his Cadillac and he would give me the first batch on the house. This is worth 15 grand, Teresa." Holding her by both shoulders, he shook her intensely again. 15 grand pure profit! Teresa slapped him with both her fists against his large, muscular chest, and with the scream of a banshee she howled, "Where is she?" The pounding on his chest did little against his massive size. With a final sigh, he realized she wasn't going to give up. Don Carlos left with Ari 5 minutes ago. They're probably still outside. Now get off me and relax. Without another word, Teresa spun on her heel and made a dash to the kitchen, bashing the blinds open to look in the front yard. She saw with relief Don Carlos's Cadillac was still there. He was in the driver's seat, with Ari seated next to him. He was manipulating the remote control to the hydraulic system, making the front and back end to the Cadillac bounce up and down. Ari was looking amused, not scared. Teresa made her way quickly outside to see Benjamin pulling up with 2 other vehicles. She made eye contact with him. He looked extremely concerned, of course. Her responsible little Benjamin was showing up to save the day from the nuclear apocalypse. Teresa welcomed the apocalypse. Their life was a mix from the highest highs to the lowest lows. She was glad to see that her son got out, and also glad her son was right here at this moment. She watched his facial expressions as the porch light from her trailer lit the interior of his vehicle. She recognized the person in the passenger seat. Her trailer in the passenger seat of the big camping van behind him. It was their neighbor's daughter, Naomi, sister of Wendell and Thomas, kids who worked for Wendell and lived next door. The girls' faces in the van looked concerned as well. Teresa switching her focus back to Don Carlos and his bouncing hydraulic Cadillac. It was bouncing the front end up and down, pausing and lifting into the air with each dramatic bounce. She looked at his face. He was a young Mexican national, handsome even. His dark features, his swept-back dark hair, his shaved face, along with a thick mustache, left him exposing his strong jawline. As Benjamin pulled up, his lights still on, directly towards the car, immediately he saw that his sister was inside. The last time he spoke to her, she was distraught, but now he watched her face as the bouncing up and down of the Cadillac had her giggling with some strange man, where she sat precariously close to him. When Don Carlos's face became illuminated with his headlights, he put his hand up to block the light from his eyes. He then noticed Teresa and Benjamin staring right at him. Benjamin watched as the giggling Ari sitting next to Don Carlos, noticed them both as well. Leaned over to Don Carlos and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. Benjamin watched as the young Mexican man's expression shifted to pay attention to Ari, who was now helping herself out of the vehicle. She looked at her mother, who didn't say a word, and then ran to her brother's truck. "Benjamin, you came! Thank you so much. Everything's okay now." "Who was that with you in the car?" "Oh, that's one of Wendell's friends. Wendell said to just humor him. He was really nice. He just wanted to talk to me and show me his bouncing car. I know I've always been shy, but he was charming. Don't worry, Benjamin. Anyway, you're here now. Who is that with you?" Ari asked. Benjamin told his sister. "These are my friends. We were camping when you called. I was really worried about you." He glanced over and saw Don Carlos get out of his car and lean against it. Teresa walked up next to him without saying a word. They both just watched Ari talking to Benjamin. "Listen, Ari. There's a nuclear bomb that just exploded off the airspace of the Gulf of America by New York. We haven't been hit directly, but this is a bad situation. It doesn't seem like the city is really the best place to be right now. The best thing for us to do is for you to go inside, pack your bags, and let's get out of here." Ari looked at Benjamin, tilting her head skeptically. "Yeah, I did get that message on my cell phone too, but nobody really cares. Look at Mom and Wendell, everybody here at the party. It doesn't seem like it's going to affect us." Benjamin responded, "Ari, I know they don't understand what's going on. They're high out of their minds. Look, I've researched this type of thing, okay? There could be fallout or EMPs. We were on the road seeing that there are some people's cars that didn't work." By Ari's facial expression, he could tell she really didn't understand, but she responded, "Okay, I trust you. I'll go get my stuff." And at that, she ran into the house past her mom, who just looked relieved that Don Carlos wasn't a creep. Sarah and Naomi had gotten out of their coming van and walked up to Benjamin's Toyota Tacoma window. Naomi told him, "Hey, we're going to check on my parents, okay?" He told them that everything was good here, and Ari was just getting her things. "I told her I need to get out of the city before things start to finally sink into everyone." He watched as they went next door to Naomi's house. Naomi and Sarah made their way in, Naomi using her key. "Mom? Dad?" she shouted out loud. Naomi's dad shouted a response from the living room. "We're in here." Naomi and Sarah made their way into the living room, where both her elderly parents were in their recliners watching the news. Her parents, Lorenzo and Julia, always sat in their recliners. "Hey, Mom, Dad, did you hear what happened? We felt a blast when we were camping. There are some people whose cars weren't working on the way here in the city." "Come here, Naomi. Come sit down with us. Hey, Sarah, it's good to see you. I'm glad to see you guys are okay, but shh." Naomi's dad. "There's an important part coming on TV right now. Let's listen to it." The Fox News host announced that the president of Iran, who Israel was blaming for these devastating attacks across the world, was making a statement. He implored,
I start off by introducing myself as the President of Iran. I implore America and the rest of the world to listen immediately. I repeat, we are not responsible for any of these attacks. In fact, Israel used its Samson option to attack everywhere, all of its allies and enemies at once, to blame this on us. But I will tell you that we are sick and tired of Netanyahu's games. We will not stand idly by as the Jewish Prime Minister continues to spin a web of lies and deceit. The Mossad's motto is win by ways of deception. I admit it and live by it. I am calling to all of our sleeper agents across the world to rise up and show this tyranny that Allah is great. He repeated, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, several times, and then went on to say, My brothers, many virgins await you in paradise tonight. Show them the real wrath of Islam as you jihad yourself to greatness. Do not stop until sweet death consumes you, brothers. And again, we will not be taking credit for any of the bombings, but we will be retaliating against all of you for being suppressed for all this time. For any of you who are confused at my message, just wait and see what is in store for you, infidel. Naomi's dad turned down the TV. He said something under his breath, mumbling to himself. He got up, struggling a bit, in his old man haste. He shuffled forward, knocking over his TV dinner tray. It clattered to the floor, spilling remotes and magazines, a glass of water spilling onto the carpet. Dad, where are you going? Naomi asked with a concerned tone. Damn it, he said aloud, still mumbling incoherently. He ignored Naomi and maneuvered his girth into the hall. She followed him. He opened up the closet in the master bedroom and knelt down, rummaging around. Dang sons of bitches, he muttered louder. Naomi, come help your old pa. Help me drag this out. Naomi joined her father, pushing aside yarn bins and laundry baskets to bring out a long and old wide gun case. They put it on the edge of the bed. By this time, Sarah had come to the doorway. Naomi's mom, Julia, behind her asked, Honey, what exactly are you doing? He didn't answer. He just opened the case. Julia asked again in an old and weary voice, Lorenzo, dear, answer me right now. He held up a Beretta M1938 submachine gun. I used this in the war, Julia. It's my consolation prize for them making me do what I did. Kill men. He paused and explained. My sergeant helped me get it home. It's not exactly legal, but it works like a charm. He smiled. I keep it oiled and cleaned and bravo! He held it up in admiration. He made the classic Italian man kissing motion with his hand. Lorenzo was an old man. Him and Julia had all their children very late in life, but right now, after hearing the news, he seemed to be standing up a bit straighter. His wrinkled face and big belly gave way to a glimpse of his younger self. Lorenzo was 14 years old in World War II, when an adventurous Italian boy lied about his age and joined the fighting. He was 92 now and still mentally sharp. His wife, Julia, was 82. They immigrated to America after the war and started a life. Lorenzo smuggled in his gun. Naomi's dad told her to grab the other case from the closet. She opened it and saw 10 9mm magazines that each held 40 9mm bullets. They were long and slender looking. Listen to me, sweetheart. He grabbed Naomi's hand. Your mom and I are old. We can nearly get around these days. That message on the news meant something really bad is about to happen. It could happen here in Prescott, too. Your old papa is going to show you girls how to work this thing safely. I used to protect me in the war, and it's going to protect you too, but you need to listen carefully. Naomi looked into the weathered eyes, and all the years her dad's loving taught her life lessons and helped her through life. His wisdom transcending the ages, she voiced her agreement, and over the next 30 minutes, Julia watched her devoted husband of 64 years as he taught Sarah and Naomi everything there was to know about the Beretta M1938 machine gun. Meanwhile, next door at Wendell's trailer, Ari packed a bag of essentials and non-essentials, keepsakes, a few changes of clothes, and some makeup.
Shouldering her backpack on, the loud pumping of the party music thrumming in the floorboards and walls seemed to amp her up for what was next. She knew Benjamin wasn't the one to overreact in situations. He was very level-headed. She made her way from her room, pushing past the frantic party people and back out onto the front lawn. Teresa was talking to her son Benjamin near his truck. Ari stopped to say bye for now to Don Carlos. She thought he looked handsome leaning on his Cadillac the way he was. When she approached him, he was looking down, watching something on his phone. She touched his arm and he looked up. Hola, Florecita. Un momento, por favor. I have to make a phone call. He navigated his contacts, selecting one quickly, and held his phone to his ear. He walked to the trunk of his car and popped it open. Ari heard him speak the words, Sicario, rapido, andale. Finished with his call, he quickly put his phone away and urgently dug into the trunk. He closed it and walked back to Ari. Her eyes grew wide, seeing he had a high-tech-looking rifle over his shoulder. Hermosa, the news broadcasted a warning that there may be attacks happening soon. There's a declaration from the Iranian president calling for sleeper cells to start jihad against civilians. I've got some of my men on their way here. If things get serious like I think they will, they're all going to need some help. Teresa's heart was pounding. The relief of finding her daughter okay and not in the hands of some creep washed away as the horrifying message relayed from Don Carlos mixed with the cocktail of drugs she was on from Wendell's party. Next to the fact, she felt totally and completely helpless to defend her little girl. She turned to look at her son, who she knew was reliable, and didn't know if he was up to this type of task. From what she'd seen, Jason was getting off on this whole apocalypse thing. But now that it might actually be at her front door, she didn't know what to think. Boom! The earth shook underneath her feet. Benjamin reflexively grabbed onto Ari, steadying her, as what felt like a blast wave rushed through the trailer park. Boom, 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 boom. Smaller blasts let off. Benjamin thought it sounded like a heavy machine gun. Sirens could be heard in the distance. Next door, Sarah and Naomi came outside, opening the front door fast, but in their caution did not step out. Benjamin could see them from their front porch light. They ushered over to him, waving him to come over. With only a moment's hesitation, it was get in the truck with Ari, go to Wendell's house, or run across the street and join Sarah and Naomi in her parents' house. The choice was easy as he grabbed Ari and told his mom to go inside. We need to find out what's going on. Don Carlos and Teresa came outside just as everybody in the party from Wendell's trailer poked their heads out the windows, opened the doors, came out the side exit. They wanted to know what was going on. Wendell's face appeared out the window. He was high as a kite. He yelled something at Teresa, but she couldn't hear him. She was running, her heart pounding, sweat dripping off her face. She pushed past the people that were standing in the front entrance and told them, "Shut the damn door! There's something going on out there!" Benjamin and Ari hurried past the threshold of Naomi's dad, Lorenzo and Julia's house. They knew Benjamin from when he was just a boy, and they knew Ari as well. Lorenzo and Julia knew that their two sons were over at Wendell's house. Benjamin started speaking. I don't know what that was, but it sounded like a huge explosion, just like before. Then it sounded like machine guns started going off all over the place. It sounded close, too. For something to be that loud, it had to be a 50 cal or something. Benjamin looked outside the window. He could still hear sirens and the boom, boom, boom of the machine guns. His mind was racing. Ari clutched onto him. He looked at her face, her eyes brimming with tears. Benjamin, I'm scared. What's happening out there? Who's firing guns? Benjamin looked outside the window. He saw the light of a helicopter fly over the nighttime sky, several of them. Lorenzo walked back over and sat on his couch. He told Julia to hand him the remote, and he flipped on the local news. The Fox News station, showing aerial footage from a news helicopter revealing a gruesome scene in Prescott. Several 4x4 trucks with mounted machine guns in the back, full of men, were driving around parking lots, streets, shooting at houses, and mowing down people. Julia told Lorenzo, "Turn up the volume. I want to hear what they're saying." Benjamin, Ari, Sarah, and Naomi came to join Lorenzo on the couch. Julia went to sit in her recliner chair. Everybody was tense, and the sound of gunfire outside didn't stop. Benjamin looked at Naomi. She was carrying a shoulder-strapped machine gun. She was carrying it so casually, Benjamin didn't notice it at first. He didn't get a chance to ask yet, as Lorenzo pumped the volume too high, and the newscaster said, "We're getting urgent reports of the attacks all across the city. Everywhere in the state and in multiple states inside of the USA. This must be a direct reaction from the Iranian president's declaration for his soldiers to start a jihad. We're recommending that everybody shelter in place, and if you have to, or you can, defend yourselves and your home. It is not recommended to go out into the streets, as it seems anybody at large shopping malls, grocery stores, anywhere on the highway and roads are being targeted by these men." Benjamin monitored Ari's face as she watched the images. Her eyes wide, she seemed to be breathing rapidly. He wanted to tell her to look away, but she needed to know the seriousness of the situation. She began weeping quietly, and like a chain reaction, so did Naomi. She propped the submachine gun onto the arm of the couch, leaning it so it wouldn't fall over. She wiped at her eyes. Sarah could tell she was trying to bring herself together. She was scared, very scared herself. This is supposed to be a safe country. Nothing like this has ever happened. 9/11 didn't even come close to this type of scale attack." Lorenzo spoke again. "Listen, we'll be fine. We've just got to remain calm. This whole trailer park is up high on a hill. All those places we can see these trucks are lower. I don't think we're going to be likely hit by these stray bullets. And the news just said the National Guard and armored SWAT teams are coming into Prescott City to launch a counterattack. Look at us. We have my gun. Other Americans have guns too. And it's a few of them versus us. We completely outnumber them. We just have the benefit surprise on our side." Lorenzo explained he wasn't afraid of death. Not anymore. He wanted his daughter to have the best chance at survival. He didn't want to give his life or Julia's for no reason as well. Even being in his 90s, Lorenzo had the mental clarity of a much younger man. Julia's motherly instinct kicked in, and Julia offered to make everybody some tea. She bustled her way into the kitchen and put on a pot of hot water. Over the next hour, they monitored the situation. The news was able to capture a lot of footage, but ended up losing a helicopter due to the strafing rounds of the .50 caliber. After that, they stopped sending up helicopters and switched to drones. They were much harder to target, and the terrorist group weren't able to see them, as they could fly so high but still remain stealth in the darkness. The footage from the drones relayed that there were double the number of trucks, and they were all in major cities here in Arizona. But the group was counting 17 machine gun trucks in Prescott alone. The number was astronomical, as Prescott wasn't that big. The news broadcaster spoke again. "We're getting reports that there are more trucks." Hours went by as the group proceeded to pray for safety and deliverance from this World War III that seemed to be taking place all around them. Sarah did not cease in her prayers, and the constant internal monologue was taking place between her and God. She felt comfort in it, like she was on a phone call and never said amen. "Reports are now coming in that a standoff between the Mormon Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints have several men in the stone tower. It seems that a band of Mormon militia have comprised a plan to take a stand against the onslaught from the Muslim terrorists. It seems that the structures of the Mormon temple have divinely been built. The brick and stone designed has led them some cover, as they are reportedly using long rifles to counterattack the savage terrorists." Upon hearing this news, Sarah jumped up in startlement when a knock at the door came. Lorenzo looked through the peephole and didn't recognize the man. Naomi, Benjamin, and Ari looked through the blinds, and Ari said, "That's Don Carlos." Why would he be knocking on the door?" Benjamin asked. He went to the door with Ari following behind him. Lorenzo opened it at their recognition, and Don Carlos introduced himself to the old Italian man. Intrigued, Sarah and Naomi also went to the door to hear what Don Carlos had to say. Don Carlos introduced himself to Benjamin. "I don't think we've properly met. Hell of a distraction. My name is Don Carlos." Benjamin looked at the young man's face. It was defined in a distinguished way. His hair black and slicked back, a broad mustache, black eyebrows that made all of his facial expressions distinct. The two men shook hands, and Don Carlos shook hands with Lorenzo as well. "I understand that our time together was cut short," he told Ari, "but it was lovely to meet you.
In fact, I'd like to propose a plan so we could meet again when all of this is over. You see, I'm in charge of many men under my command. These are the type of men that are like soldiers in a way. We have a strong presence here now, and the trailer park is completely locked down. He turned to Ari. Please know that I am trying to keep you safe. We have proposed a plan to get out of this area. With the Mormon militia forming at all their churches, it is a good distraction for us to leave. We haven't exactly made up our minds as to where, but with the amount of men and vehicles that we have, we're well armed and can form a defense to get us out of the city.
Sarah interrupted and gave her a notion. Her idea came back to her house. She described it as a homestead of sorts, and everyone concurred. Lorenzo told Don Carlos,
Listen, we can't really get around well in our old age, but I would be indebted to you if you got my girl out of here safely. I'm assuming my sons are still at Wendell's trailer. Carlos confirmed his suspicions and said, Yes, in fact. The 2 young men in Wendell and his crew have formed an alliance to join us. I've explained to everyone that the situation is dire.
Sarah's dog Lady had been by her side this entire time. She'd always been obedient, but when Don Carlos came in, she seemed to be okay with his presence. She had never been in such an intense situation, and Sarah was impressed with her dog's alert but calm demeanor. Sarah looked at the face of her best friend Naomi, who had walked back into the room and picked up her rifle that her dad had given her. She shouldered it, and it seemed to bring her some comfort. Her crying spell was over now, as was Ari's, who had come to the front door to address Don Carlos's appearance. Don Carlos turned and spoke with her. Florecita, I know I've only known you tonight, but in my family, there's wisdom that is passed down, that love is found when you're young. I'm only 20 years old and was born into the hierarchy of my family. I have 20 men here. We have 7 vehicles and weapons. If I never see you again, all I want from tonight is to know that you're out of the city and safe. Sarah was speechless. Sarah turned and spoke. Don Carlos, I don't even know you. None of us do. Ari was speechless. Ari turned and spoke. Don Carlos, I don't even know you. None of us do. But what you're saying makes sense. I feel trapped, and I'm sure the rest of us feel the same. I'm just a girl. I'm not a soldier.
What is this?
Sarah was speechless. Sarah turned and spoke. Don Carlos, I don't even know you. None of us do. But what you're saying makes sense. I feel trapped. I'm sure the rest of us feel the same. I'm just a girl, not a soldier. We were camping and having a great time just a little while ago until all of this started so quickly. Lorenzo stepped up and said,
Listen, I know Arizona pretty well. From what we can see on the news, all the main roads are dangerous. There's a road called Iron Springs that leads to Williamson Highway, which goes about 20 miles, then turns into a dirt road with scenic forests and old-timey towns. It isn't really known well. Only people who drive from Prescott to Seligman take this road, as a sort of novelty. It's a long scenic drive. There's not much of anything but nature in the Prescott National Forest. This going to be our best way. Sarah, I know your parents just bought the place in Williams. Seligman's only a hop, skip, and a jump from there. If we're going to leave, we should go through the neighborhoods. If what Don Carlos is offering seems to be our best chance of surviving any type of encounter. I'm an old man. I did my best to show you and Naomi how this machine gun works, and I hope you don't ever have to use it.
Lorenzo's wife pointed to the TV. It was showing aerial footage of the Muslim invaders and their tactical 50 cal trucks all over the city of Prescott. When she switched channels, it showed the same thing happening all over America in every state. They switched over to Pete Hegseth's announcement.
People of America, it is a very grim evening. It has been determined that every state and multiple cities in every state of America are undergoing a siege, jihadists. No terrorist group has made such a bold move against America as they have tonight. Thousands are dead already, and our police and sheriff's forces, constitutional sheriffs of America, are in coordination. But large numbers of police and sheriff deputies are not responding due to taking care of their own family and the craziness of the situation.
We are urging Americans to arm themselves and to fight back to protect your own homes. Sheltering in a place may be wise, but we're getting reports that the jihadist terrorists started with hitting local populated suburban areas, grocery stores, business centers, but now we're seeing reports everywhere that they are going into neighborhoods, strafing all the homes until they run out of ammunition or someone fights back. We're asking you. There are only a little over 1 million soldiers stationed here in America due to the past 4 years of Biden. We are asking you. He has left over 40 million illegal immigrants. There are just the reported numbers. We have largely confirmed that these are military men, illegal immigrants, were crossing over and expedited through buses and planes from the Biden administration. This is an act against humanity. The Obama administration could have circumvented this, but instead expedited these military-age immigrants, who are now deeming as terrorists based on their jihadist actions, into America, busing them and flying them with planes into every major city, providing them with Visa cards and paid housing, food stamps, even Social Security and medical care, all paid for by the American taxpayer. Since Trump has been into office, he has largely sought to deport these criminals through ICE, but they've stayed hidden. As you are seeing tonight, this is a stoppable force. I will not admit that this is an unstoppable force because the spirit of American people will not be broken. Take up arms and fight for your families. May God bless us all. After hearing Pete Hegseth's announcement, the urgency of the situation really sank in. Sarah turned to Don Carlos and told him frankly, "We don't know you, Don Carlos. We just met you tonight." Her glance moved to Naomi. "We're not soldiers, and Naomi's parents are old. We want to get out of here as much as everyone else." Her gaze was stoic as she glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of everyone there. Naomi, Benjamin, Ari, Lorenzo, and Julia. Finally, she looked back at Don Carlos. He seemed to be only a little younger than her. "It doesn't seem like we have any choice. We're going to have to trust you. I know my parents would want me to get home safe." Benjamin stepped in and said, "If you're doing this all for my sister, I'm not going to question your motives. You're going above and beyond. But her and I are sticking together. We'll drive in my truck." Sarah spoke again and said, "Me, Naomi, and her parents can drive in our camping van. It's got a 4-wheel drive." Her dog lady jumped up and put her 2 front paws on her owner. She patted her head and called her a good girl. Looking back up, she told Don Carlos, "We have 2 friends out in the RV who are camping with us. I'm sure they're going to want to join in." Don Carlos nodded his head. "That is fine. I'm going to send 2 of my cars ahead of the scouts. I'll tell them to take the direction that Lorenzo suggested. We can weave our way through the neighborhoods until we hit Williamson Road. Then if all goes as planned, that isolated road should take us back way through the Prescott National Forest. We should be able to escape the city safely. If anything were to happen, the scouts should be able to see it first. I'll have 3 cars in front, 2 scouts ahead of them mapping the way. They'll be able to use their radios to talk with us all. I should have enough to give you each one. We'll have 3 cars in back. We'll keep Wendell and his crew in the back as well. You guys can ride in the middle. Form a convoy." Minutes later, Sarah, Naomi, and her parents were packing things into the back of her camping van. This was a luxury van loaded with all sorts of accessories and 4-wheel drive. Sarah got into the driver's seat, letting her dog jump in first, and everyone else found their seats. She started up the van and pulled up to Benjamin, who was talking to the old man Bert and his wife Honey in their RV. Clearly, he was explaining things. Outside of the house, and hearing, more like feeling, constant bursts echoing in the air from the machine gun fire down in the town. The reverberating shock each bullet fired sent into her chest made her feel like she was walking in a dreamlike nightmare. The illusion of safety of Naomi's parents' house fell away, and everything seemed to weigh 1,000,000 pounds. The anxiety had ramped up tenfold, and Sarah's dog lady seemed to sense the tension in the van. They were talking about sicarios, and it was clear now they were seeing things they never thought they'd see, like some twisted scene to their parents. All in all, it was almost too much to handle. Everybody aligned as they listened to the walkie-talkie crackle to life that Don Carlos's men had passed out to all the vehicles. One of the men explained not to talk unless you had to, and to keep the channels clear. Naomi was in the passenger seat, and she switched on the radio to see if there were any more news announcements. The news person spoke in an urgent tone. Reports of these coordinated jihadist attacks are confirmed to be all over the world. Every major city, every Western country, Europe has fallen. The amount of Muslim men they've let into their countries over their people were far too much and completely outnumbered the original inhabitants, 5-1. They have declared Sharia law, and the Western European governments have completely fallen. As for the United States, it seems that the spirit of the people are rallying. Reports of Mormon militiamen, sheriffs, SWAT, and police National Guard have added up to a small regiment that are now aligning together with their citizens to combat the invasion in every city. With varying degrees of success, Naomi turned the dial again to a local news station that was reporting the activities for Yavapai County, elaborating on the Mormon militia who were combating the attacks in Prescott with armored SWAT vehicles assisting them. 7 of the Muslim tactical 50 cal trucks had been eliminated as SWAT, and a small remnant of the Mormon militia had set up on rooftops scattered across different neighborhoods, churches, and business centers. It seemed to be effective, but other reports say that the men have slowed their fire or either run out of ammunition for large guns. They're now using their assault rifles and getting out on foot to continue their massacre. Even though our resistance may seem small, the impact has shown that there may be hope to stop this attack. Sarah turned down the radio and started praying aloud. She began reciting Joshua 1:9, and then a passage from Isaiah, and then finalizing the prayer, left off with something out of Psalms. Her feminine voice echoed strongly throughout the cab. Naomi was in the front seat. Benjamin and Ari sat behind her passenger seat in the rear of the van. Behind Naomi was Lorenzo and his wife Julia. Julia commented that it was a beautiful prayer. Back and forth squawking from the radio from Don Carlos's lookouts to the convoy vehicles could still be heard, but nothing urgent. Lorenzo spoke up. I agree. I've read those same scriptures to myself over and over in the war. Listen, girls, we're on the road now. We'll just keep on going nice and slow until we get out to Williamson Road. We've got the benefit being in a group like this. Got 2 guns in the car, in this van. Sarah, your sidearm. He continued. I know I'm not the only one here. I know I'm the only one here who's ever shot to kill a man. The first time I did it, I was terrified, but I knew I had to. It wasn't until the action was over that it fully sank in. I reacted without thinking, and some of the other men froze up. It's a fight-or-flight instinct. Well, it wasn't as common as you'd think. Most people's Sarah and Naomi, you guys know how to use these weapons, he added. Sad to say, we're in the war zone now. This is our home. Prescott has been mostly peaceful for so many years, and with our biased complacency, we've never thought something like this could happen until now. Julia put a hand on her husband. Naomi turned to face her father, swiveling the seat to look at him. This feels like a nightmare, she said. I want to think that I can react and shoot if I have to, but I just can't imagine it. I'm afraid at any moment a bullet's just going to fly through the van and hit us, she added. I got better after Sarah's prayer. I just keep repeating those words in my head, Naomi admitted. Her voice delicate and soft. Ari chimed in. Sarah felt perspiration on her forehead, and using her free hand brushed her blonde hair back behind her ear. Her eyes were focused on the taillights of the car in front of her, driving past streetlight after streetlight in the neighborhoods. It all seemed quiet, except for the thunderous machine gun fire rattling off in the inner city. They seemed to be getting closer to it. She wiped the perspiration from her hands on her blue jeans, wanting to have a good grip on the steering wheel. Her blue eyes were locked on the road ahead as she prayed silently to herself. The walkie-talkie squeaked with an urgent, "We've got sirens incoming from the north." A moment later, Sarah could hear that lookout radio to Don Carlos. "Jefe, I've got a visual on the police sirens. Seems to be a police armored vehicle. Everybody stop. It should pass by 2 streets ahead, heading in the direction of the I-69 and Glassford Hill Supercenter." Don Carlos radioed for everyone to stop. Red lights illuminated all the faces in her van as the taillights grew bright in front of her. Naomi and Sarah just looked at each other. Naomi's eyes looked like bright doe eyes, and her green irises shone clear as the red and blue lights illuminated the entire convoy. Nobody moved as an armored vehicle rushed by. It had to be going at least 70 miles an hour down the neighborhood roads. Lorenzo broke the silence. They're on our side. That's a good sign to see. Then, as the red and blue lights from the armored vehicle passed, the distant gunfire seemed to teleport to right beside them. Immediately, the walkie-talkies blasted voices shouting, "Jefe, we've got a jihadi tactical firing their 50 cals at the armored vehicle. It's only one street away, on the other side of these two houses." The sound was deafening. The mix of the sirens with the attacking force's machine guns so close. Sarah could feel the vibrations of each blast thundering in her chest. Don Carlos ordered everybody to go, 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 vámonos! Sarah punched the gas as they sped away, following the cars ahead of them. Father God, please keep us safe. Please keep everybody in the van safe. Please don't let any of us be hurt. She mumbled a prayer. Her breathing was heavy. She was panting frantically, trying to control the van and keep up with the people ahead of them. Just as the sound seemed to be dissipating a little, bright lights from her left seemed to be racing toward them. It seemed like time froze as she watched in horror as a four-wheel drive pickup with a man mounting a huge gun on the back slammed into the tan Toyota Tacoma in front of them. Boom! The screeching metal sounded like a banshee's wail. As time slowed, she stomped on the brakes. The Toyota Tacoma had completely flipped over, spinning once and then twice, finally landing upside down. Sarah flinched hard as the insane accident happened above her. The man on the gunner started firing immediately. The gun swiveled and pointed right at Sarah's van. Boom, boom, boom! She didn't have time to think. She pressed the gas and attempted to drive away. She was confused for a second when none of the bullets hit her. One of Don Carlos's vehicles swiveled left, and she had to hit the brakes again, quick. She was stuck. The men from one of Don Carlos's trucks all jumped out with their guns pointed at the tactical truck. They were dressed in military gear, and all three of their faces Sarah could see were heavily tattooed. The one she saw earlier with his face tattooed and a skeleton walked right past her window. There was nothing she could do but duck as his facial expression remained concentrated with a grim look in his eye. He blasted his assault rifle right next to her window as he targeted the Muslims in the truck. Other gunfire erupted from behind her as some of the jihadists fired back at the man. Suddenly, Sarah's side mirror exploded, disintegrated into nothing in a wild explosion as one of the bullets hit. Her window was up, and the glass ricocheted from the force. The only thing stopping the glass from hitting her was her driver's seat window. Everyone in the van was screaming, including Sarah, who was now crying, trying to make herself as small as possible, sinking down into the footwell of her seat. She looked beside her and saw that Lorenzo was on top of Naomi, whose seat was swiveled 90 degrees facing her. As a camping van, it allowed the front seats to swivel from front to back. Lorenzo was speaking in Italian. An explosion of glass pelted her in the face as the back windshield was obliterated with bullets. Boom, boom, boom! And the front windshield crackled into 1,000 spider webs and more glass fell. Her face felt wet. She knew it was from tears, but then blood ran down from her eyes as she brushed furiously to wipe the mess away. I'm shot, she thought for a second, as suddenly all the shouting stopped. She couldn't feel any pain, just her pounding heart, which seemed to sound louder than the gunfire all around her. God help me, please, Jesus, protect me, she whispered to herself, sobbing. I'm shot, she whimpered. Her hair was slicked to her face, covered in blood. Am I shot in the head? She thought for a second. But then the shooting stopped. She couldn't feel anything except her pounding heart. God help me, she sobbed. She was crying, trying to make herself as small as possible in the footwell. She saw Lorenzo comforting Naomi. She whispered prayers, sobbing. Her face was covered in blood and her hair was matted to her skin. She thought she was shot in the head as everything went quiet. She was in shock, and her heart was pounding louder than the gunfire. Lorenzo was cursing in Italian, and everything went quiet. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps, the taste of fear sharp on her tongue. For a moment the world was a blur of red and blue lights, shattered glass, and the metallic scent of blood. Lorenzo's voice cut through the haze, a firm hand on her shoulder as he leaned down, his eyes intense but reassuring.
Sarah, stay with me. You're okay. Just breathe.
She nodded, feeling the sting of tears mixing with the blood on her face, but his words anchored her. Around them, the chaos seemed to slow, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Naomi's trembling voice came next, whispering a prayer of thanks that they were still alive. Outside, the sounds of distant sirens and fading gunfire began to blur into the background. Somehow, in this fragile moment of calm, Sarah realized they had survived the worst of the storm. As the tension slowly ebbed, Sarah took a shaky breath, the pounding in her chest finally beginning to settle. Lorenzo's presence was a reassuring weight, a reminder that they weren't alone in this. Naomi, still pressed close, offered Sarah a small, wavering smile, her eyes glassy but hopeful.
We're going to be okay, Lorenzo murmured, more a promise than a statement. We just have to get a little farther out of the city. We'll find a safe place.
Sarah nodded, clutching the steering wheel as if it were a lifeline. The world outside the van was still a blur of uncertainty, but inside, there was a flicker of hope, a fragile, flickering light that maybe, just maybe, they could make it through the darkness together. As the last echoes of gunfire faded, Don Carlos rushed toward the flipped Tacoma, shouting, "No, no, no!" as he reached the wreckage. He yanked open the door and pulled out the bloody, unconscious forms of Benjamin and Ari. Both were alive, but badly battered, their bodies limp in his arms. Inside the van, Sarah was still trembling, her face a mask of blood from the head wound. Lorenzo gently placed a hand on her shoulder, reassuring her in his calm, fatherly tone.
It looks worse than it is, Sarah. Head wounds bleed a lot, but you'll be okay.
He quickly removed his cotton vest, clearing the shattered glass and wrapping it around her head like a makeshift bandage. Sarah nodded, tears mixing with the blood, whispering a thank you as she tried to steady her breathing. Naomi glanced one last time at Sarah, torn between staying and helping her friend and rushing out to check on Benjamin and Ari. With Lorenzo tending to Sarah, Naomi made her decision. She hurried out of the van, her heart pounding as she ran to the overturned Tacoma. Don Carlos was already kneeling beside Benjamin and Ari, his face a mix of concern and something deeper as he looked at Ari. He had started to fall for her in this whirlwind of chaos, and the sight of her bloodied and unconscious self made his chest tighten. Naomi arrived just in time to see Don Carlos gently lifting Ari into his arms, his voice firm but reassuring.
She's breathing. We'll get her safe.
Naomi knelt beside Benjamin, checking him over, relief flooding her as she realized he was still alive. Together they worked quickly, pulling both Benjamin and Ari to safety while the rest of Don Carlos' men secured the area. With Lorenzo carefully bandaging Sarah's head, she felt the warm, sticky sensation of blood mingling with sweat on her face. The cotton vest Lorenzo used was rough, but comforting as he dabbed away the blood and reassured her that head wounds always bled more than they looked. Through the shattered rear window of the van, Sarah's eyes locked on the mangled RV. It was a miracle any of them were still breathing. In her heart, she wondered if God somehow shielded Bert and Honey from the worst of it. While Lorenzo continued tending to her, Sarah carefully got out of the van, her legs shaky but determined. Naomi was already heading towards the RV's wreckage, and together with Lorenzo and Julia, they approached the broken shell. To their astonishment, Bert and Honey crawled out from a side door, shaken but alive. They'd somehow found shelter in a corner that had spared them the brunt of the devastation. As the older couple joined the group, everyone exchanged looks of disbelief and gratitude. They quickly decided Bert and Honey would ride in the camping van with Sarah and the others, while Benjamin and Ari, still dazed but stable, would join them as well. Meanwhile, the Sicarios finished their grim task, ensuring every attacker was neutralized. Gunshots rang out as they double-tapped the invaders who'd fallen. They returned to give Don Carlos a brief after-action report. They'd lost a vehicle, but they had to move quickly. The city was still under siege, and they needed to reach Williamson Valley Road as soon as possible. As Benjamin regained consciousness, his eyes landed on Don Carlos holding Ari. For a brief moment, Ari looked up at Don Carlos, seeing the concern in his eyes and feeling a strange sense of safety. But as Benjamin crawled over, Ari's gaze shifted to her brother, the relief of family pulling her back to reality. They had survived something unimaginable, and now they had to keep surviving. In Ari's eyes, the world came back slowly, each raindrop that touched her face pulling her further into consciousness. The cold rain mingled with the warmth of her own blood and the lingering ache of bruises all over her body. She felt the strong arms of Don Carlos holding her gently, his voice a soft murmur. "Florecita, are you okay?" he asked, his dark eyes filled with concern. Blinking through the rain and pain, Ari looked up into his face and felt an unexpected sense of safety in the chaos. The shattered glass around them sparkled like a broken mirror, reflecting the nightmare they'd just survived. As she turned her head, she saw the Tacoma completely overturned, the sight making her realize just how close they'd come to disaster. Don Carlos brushed a strand of wet hair from her face and pressed a reassuring kiss to her forehead. "You're safe now. You're okay," he whispered, and for a moment Ari felt the strange warmth beyond just gratitude. Then she heard her brother's voice, Benjamin, coughing up a bit of blood, struggling to his feet and calling out to her. "Ari, are you okay?" His voice snapped her back fully to reality. She turned from Don Carlos's comforting gaze to see Benjamin making his way over, battered but alive. As Benjamin reached them, Don Carlos gently passed Ari into her brother's arms. The two siblings held on to each other, both of them realizing how narrowly they'd escaped. Around them, the Sicarios were finishing off the last of the attackers and reporting back to Don Carlos it was time to move. But for a brief moment in the rain, they shared a quiet, tender reunion. Sarah, Lorenzo, and the others had confirmed that Bert and Honey were safe. With everyone accounted for, the convoy had to push forward. They had survived this nightmare together, and as they regrouped, there was a fragile hope that maybe they could make it out of the city before the storm got worse. The rain was coming down in a steady, cold sheet as the group gathered near the wrecked RV. Sarah, her blonde hair matted with rain and blood, leaned on Naomi's shoulder for a moment. Naomi's father, Lorenzo, the old war veteran, was steadying her with a gentle hand. His wife, Julia, was right beside them, her face a mix of worry and relief. Benjamin limped slightly as he supported Ari, who was still regaining her bearings. She looked around, seeing Don Carlos issuing commands to his men, the Sicarios efficiently securing the area. Lorenzo cleared his throat, his voice warm but firm. "All right, everyone, let's figure this out. The RV is done for, but we've got the camping van. We can all squeeze in there and keep each other warm." Sarah nodded, wiping a mixture of rain and blood from her face. "Yeah, we'll manage. We just need to stay together." She glanced at Naomi, who gave her a reassuring smile. Julia spoke up, her voice gentle. "We'll be fine, dear. We've been protected by God. Thank you, Jesus. Let's just get moving before more trouble finds us." Her voice on the brim of tears. As they all huddled together, the cold rain seemed a little less biting. Benjamin helped Ari into the van, and she gave a final grateful look to Don Carlos before slipping inside. Don Carlos nodded at them, a silent promise that he and his men would guard their escape. "All right, let's get everyone in," Lorenzo said, ushering the group into the van. "We'll all fit. It'll be tight, but we'll make it." With that, they piled into the van, everyone finding a place. As Sarah started the engine, headlights from the passing cars cut through the snowy night. One vehicle in particular rolled up beside them, an older Honda Civic driven by a man with a hardened look. In the passenger seat was a red-haired girl, Samantha. For a moment, as the two vehicles idled side by side, Sarah's eyes met Samantha's. Recognition flashed through Sarah's mind. This was the girl who had once asked her mom for money outside the Walmart. The memory came rushing back. That rainy day, her mom Evelyn's kindness, and the uneasy feeling Sarah had even then. Inside the Honda, Samantha felt her heart clench. She knew exactly who Sarah was. As she watched Sarah's blood-streaked face, a pang of guilt washed over her. She remembered the day Jason had followed Evelyn Freeman home. It had been pouring rain, and Samantha had sat in the car as Jason crept up behind Evelyn, striking her and stealing her purse. The scene replayed in Samantha's mind, the dull thud, Evelyn collapsing, Jason's hurried return with the cash and the gun. Samantha had felt a mixture of fear and shame, but she'd stayed silent. Now, seeing Sarah in this desperate situation, Samantha's conscience weighed heavily on her. She glanced away, unable to hold Sarah's gaze any longer, as the memory of the night echoed in her mind. Sarah, unaware of the full truth, just felt a strange sense of unease as the Civic pulled away. The flash of recognition lingered, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. But there was no time to dwell on it now. They had to keep moving. As the van rumbled forward, Sarah in the driver's seat and Naomi beside her, everyone felt the chill creeping in from the shattered back window. Lorenzo and Julia huddled together behind Naomi, the older couple offering each other quiet reassurances. Benjamin and Ari, bruised and battered, but grateful to be alive, sat further back. Bert and Honey, the elderly couple who had narrowly escaped, were also nestled in, looking shaken but relieved. Sarah's phone buzzed, lighting up her face as she read the worried texts from Uncle Leonardo. She quickly typed back a response, letting him know they were all right and heading toward the homestead. The glow of the screen cast a soft light over her features, her red hair a striking contrast against the darkness. Benjamin glanced over, asking quietly, "What's the homestead like?" Sarah, still focused on the road, explained briefly that it was a safe place where her family had been preparing for emergencies, a bit of refuge out of the city after her mom was attacked in their front yard in Prescott. She remembered that terrible day. The day she was having, today, trumped that tenfold. In her chest, her heart was pounding. Bert, still holding his wife's hand, murmured a heartfelt thank you for taking them along. Honey, overwhelmed, let out a few anxious words about the danger they'd faced and how grateful she was to be among kind people. Everyone exchanged glances, the dim interior light revealing their weary but determined faces. It was cold, the night air seeping through the broken rear window, but they cranked the heater up. Snowflakes drifted lightly outside, a surreal calm after the chaos. They fell into line behind the rest of the convoy, moving slowly through the darkened streets, each of them silently praying for a safe journey ahead. Inside Jason's car, Samantha's heart pounded like a war drum in the grip of addiction. A furious rhythm summoned from hell itself, loud enough to drown the still small voice of God trying to reach her. As she nervously passed the baggie of drugs to Ashley and May, the cart felt like a pressure cooker. They had all just witnessed the brutal attack on the convoy from a distance, and the realization that they were following the same path as Sarah's group, the girl whose mother Jason had robbed, was hitting Samantha hard. "Jason, we gotta keep up with them or we're going to get left behind," Ashley urged, her voice edged with a jittery desperation as she took a quick hit. Samantha glanced back at them, and then out of the window at the convoy reforming up ahead. She could still see Sarah's van in the mix, and the flash of recognition between them lingered like a ghost. She remembered Evelyn's kindness and felt a wave of guilt wash over her, a faint whisper of the better life she'd once imagined. Jason gripped the wheel tighter, his eyes on Wendell's car up ahead. "We'll stay on their tail," he muttered, not fully understanding the storm brewing inside Samantha. As the car pushed forward through the snowy night, the girls exchanged frantic, half-whispered conversations about what lay ahead. Samantha's panic attack simmered beneath the surface, and the memory of that rainy night when Jason had struck Evelyn kept replaying in her mind. She could almost hear Evelyn's voice telling her that God was real and things would get better. The further they drove from the city, the quieter the world became. Smoke still clung to the horizon behind them, a faint smear in the rear view. But out here the sirens had gone silent. The only sound was the Civic's engine and the faint clink of a lighter in Jason's restless hands. Samantha stared out the passenger window, but she wasn't seeing trees. She saw Evelyn's face. She saw Jason shoving her, the sickening crack as the woman's head hit the pavement. Then that same hand, Jason's hand, pressing the wallet back into Evelyn's purse like nothing had happened. The memory came in sharp flashes over and over until Samantha's stomach turned. As the convoy rolled away from the city's chaos, Jason glanced at Samantha. Her profile was pale in the passing glow of the dashboard lights. Eyes distant, haunted. The recent firefight replayed behind her gaze like a film she couldn't stop. Metal shrieking, glass exploding, the staccato of rifles. But worse than that were the memories it woke in her. She saw again the rainy night when Jason had followed Evelyn Freeman home, striking her down, and then, with a thief's twisted sense of honor, returning the wallet as if it erased the sin. Samantha could never forget the thud of the blow, the gasp, and the silence that followed. Now, as the car pushed steadily along Williamson Road toward Seligman, the air inside was as dense as the forest darkness beyond the glass. The tension swelled and pressed against them, but in the back seat, Ashley and May floated somewhere else, their world reduced to a haze of smoke and glittering euphoria. The sharp chemical tang of the blue powder clung to their clothes and skin, filling the Honda with an acrid perfume that was both intoxicating and suffocating. Jason's knuckles tightened around the wheel, his voice low and rough cut into the silence.
Looks like we're in the clear.
He meant it as reassurance, but the words fell flat, landing in the car like stones sinking in water. Samantha didn't respond. She was still listening for echoes, waiting for a bullet to crash through the glass at any second. The deeper they drove into Prescott National Forest, the quieter the world became. The sirens and gunfire had melted into memory, replaced by an eerie stillness, the kind of quiet that wasn't peace, but a pause before the next storm. Jason reached for his stash with the casual precision of ritual. 3 baggies rustled in his hands, powders of different colors catching the dim light. He looked up into the rearview mirror, locking eyes with Ashley. A grin spread across his face, equal parts of charm and menace, as he handed her the glass pipe.
Here, let's mix these. A little upper, a little downer, and the new blue. This'll take the edge off. After the night we've had, we deserve it.
Ashley's eyes gleamed, her beauty sharpened by the hunger in her expression. She grinned back, showing perfect teeth, and bent to her task with the elegance of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The lighter spark lit her face in a sudden flare, her blue eyes flashing almost otherworldly as she coaxed the concoction into swirling molten vapor. She inhaled deeply, her naturally pink lips sealing around the glass, cheeks hollowing. For a suspended moment, she looked almost ethereal. Then she coughed hard, exhaling a thick cloud that curled upward and smothered the roof of the car. May leaned in next, delicate fingers tipped in glossy red, the color matching the bold lipstick she wore like armor. The dermal set in her cheeks caught the firelight as if they were tiny stars. She inhaled and exhaled with deliberate control, then coughed softly, her widened eyes betraying surprise as the potency. A faint red stain marked the rim of the pipe, proof of her kiss against the glass. When the pipe reached Samantha, she hesitated. The smoke in the car was already clinging to her throat, coiling in her chest like a warning. Her heart hammered, not just from fear of the men they followed, but from the weight of memory. Yet her hands moved anyway, trembling, reluctant, as if guided by something outside herself. She pressed the pipe to her lips, inhaled, and felt the warmth burn through her lungs before spreading into her blood. Her mind softened at the edges. The gnawing panic quieted just enough for her to breathe. Outside, the forest pressed close and silent, a cathedral of black trees heavy with snow. Inside, the Honda Civic became its own sanctuary, one of smoke and glass, guilt and fleeting relief. Samantha turned to Jason and said, "I really need to pull over so I can pee." Jason radioed Wendell, and Don Carlos responded,
"Okay, pull over for a short break, everyone."
The convoy slowed to the roadside, tires crunching against the snowpack. The forest loomed around them like an endless ancient cathedral of black pines, their branches dusted in pale silver by the moonlight. A heavy silence settled, broken only by the hiss of engines and the occasional crack of branches shifting under winter's weight. Don Carlos's voice snapped through the radio, sharp and commanding.
15 minutes, everyone. Back to the cars. We're safe for now, but don't waste it.
Ashley and May stumbled out of the Civic in a fit of laughter, their smoke-laced giggles echoing strangely in the stillness. They disappeared between the trees, clutching each other like schoolgirls drunk on secrets. Samantha lingered at the door, her breath curling into the air like a spirit rising. Snowflakes drifted into her hair, catching the fire-red strands and threads of light. Jason couldn't stop staring. Her freckles looked like constellations across her pale skin, her green eyes alive in the moonlight. For a moment, she didn't look like the woman battered by chaos and fear. She looked timeless, untouchable, almost holy. Jason pulled hard on the pipe, flames sparking glass, then exhaled a plume of smoke that twisted skyward like incense in a sanctuary. He grinned crookedly, the gesture equal parts rebellion and exhaustion.
Not bad scenery for a pit stop, huh?
Jason laughed, cheeks flushed pink in the cold. Jason, seriously, I really gotta go.
Take another hit first, he teased, holding the pipe toward her.
Jason, she tried to sound stern, but the high had loosened her edges, softened her resolve. She rolled her eyes and leaned in for one last breath, the vapor burning sweet and sharp. She coughed, laughing as she shoved the pipe back into the car. You're impossible. He watched her run toward the tree line, snow crunching under her boots, and for once the sound wasn't danger but something innocent, almost playful. He jogged after her, his heart pounding for reasons he didn't understand. They stopped among the pines, moonlight spilling through the canopy in broken shafts. Samantha bit her lip, glancing at the ground, as she unzipped her jeans and started pulling down her panties, then stopped midway. I don't want to squat all the way down. Spiders, snakes, forget it. Hold me. Jason smirked but reached for her hands, steadying her as she leaned back, laughing nervously. Their fingers interlaced, fragile and firm all at once. The moment was absurd, yet strangely sacred. The forest, the moon, the quiet hiss of wind through the branches. It was like the world had paused just for them. Jason found himself whispering, "You know, we could actually make something of our lives after this. Doesn't have to end in motels or back seats. We could be more." Samantha froze, the words hanging between them like snowflakes that refused to fall. Her mind flashed to last night, the candlelit chapel, Miranda's vows, Noah's steady hand in hers. She remembered standing there in her maid of honor dress, watching her sister promise forever. She had wanted that too, desperately. Her voice shook, but her eyes shone, and she pulled up her jeans, stepping away from the pea puddle, meeting Jason's eye, the memory fresh in her mind. I wanted Jason. Marriage, a family, kids, something real, something good. I want to wake up one day and not feel like I'm just surviving. The sound of her own words startled her. She hadn't planned to say them, not here, not like this, but under the canopy of pines with his hands holding hers, the truth demanded to be spoken. Jason stared at her. Marriage had never crossed his mind, not seriously. The very idea felt foreign, dangerous. But as the snow dusted her hair and her smile glowed against the darkness, he felt a pull so deep it frightened him. He said nothing. Instead, he leaned forward and kissed her, rough and unpolished, pouring everything he couldn't put into words into that single act. Samantha's lip parted against his, and when they broke apart, her face lit up with a smile so wide, so radiant, it made Jason's chest ache. She looked at him like he was already her forever. Ashley and May's laughter rang out nearby, pulling the world back into motion. They stumbled through the clearing, snow clinging to their coats, faces flushed with intoxicated joy. Jason didn't answer Samantha's dream aloud. He just kissed her again, harder this time, as if silence itself was a vow, and Samantha, smiling up at him through the drifting snow, seemed to believe it was. Sarah's hands gripped the wheel with a white-knuckled intensity, the slickness of rain and sweat blending against her skin. Her blue eyes traced the icy ribbons of Williamson Road ahead, every reflection in the white pavement mirrored in the depths of her gaze. Naomi sat beside her, shoulder pressed lightly against the door, her fingers intertwined in her lap, trembling almost imperceptibly. She sucked in a quiet breath, trying to steady her nerves as the engine's hum became a heartbeat beneath the distant wails of sirens and the crunch of tires on the snow-strewn road. In the back, the others were quietly tethered to their thoughts. Bert held Honey close, the older couple clinging as though the warmth of each other could shield them from the memory of the lost vehicle and the terror there had narrowly escaped. Lorenzo's eyes roved across the interior, counting each breath, each face, a silent sentinel of his family's lives. His weathered hands rested lightly on his knees, calloused fingers twitching as though expecting to grasp a weapon or shield his loved ones at a moment's notice. Finally, Lorenzo spoke, his voice trembling with reverence, the kind of quiet that demanded attention even in the chaos of snow and night. "God, in Jesus' name I beg you,
Take my life if you must, but spare my daughter, my friends, all of these souls gathered here. My hands are weak, my strength wanes, but let them live. Let them see the dawn. Let them feel peace. Let them know joy, even after this darkness. Naomi felt her chest tighten. Her father, a man of nearly a century, was willing to bear the full weight of violence and danger, so she and the others might survive. She swallowed hard, tears threatening to escape, feeling the faint tang of smoke, wet clothing, and the irony of blood lingering in the van's cramped air. The shattered rear window and riddled front windshield haunted her peripheral vision, the echoes of near death clinging like shadows. Her gaze flickered to Sarah, the blonde girl in the driver's seat. Damp strands clung to her face, streaked with dried blood. Her eyes, wide and unflinching, reflected both moonlight and a subtle defiance. There was a fragile courage in her, a strength that came from surviving what so many would have crumbled beneath. Naomi could see the exhaustion etched in the corners of her eyes, the slight tremor of her fingers, the slow, deliberate rise and fall of her chest. Benjamin and Ari sat quietly behind them, bruised and battered, their bodies a testament to the night's violence. Each inhalation seemed measured, a small victory against the trauma they carried. The forested world outside was quiet now, the snow falling like pale confetti over the frozen landscape, hiding the scars of chaos with a deceptive serenity. Don Carlos's voice cut through the silence over the radio, commanding yet calm. 15 minutes, everyone back to your vehicles. Stretch your legs, we're safe for now, but remember, we don't know for how long. The collective exhale rippled through the van, the taut atmosphere loosened as if the night itself allowed a breath. Outside, the snow shimmered in faint silver light, a tapestry of fragile beauty over the dangerous world. Don Carlos stepped into the drift, producing a black umbrella that shielded Ari from the gentle rain beginning to fall. He gestured for her to walk alongside him, his hand brushing against hers, a grounding touch in the chaos. Florecita, he murmured, voice low, intimate, carrying the heat of human warmth against the chill of the night. I feel destiny brought us together. Twice you've saved my life. When I woke in your arms, I knew. Florecita, he murmured, voice low and intimate, carrying the heat of human warmth against the chill of the night. Ari interrupted. I have something I need to say. I feel like destiny brought us together. Twice you've saved my life. When I woke in your arms, I knew there was something here I couldn't ignore, something more than chance. Ari's lips quivered, eyes glistening under the moonlight that struck through the rain-soaked branches. Don Carlos, I've seen horrors. My father, Wendell, the drugs, the cartel, the darkness human can wield. I've seen it, she swallowed, glancing down at her hands before meeting his gaze. But you, I trust you. I believe you're different. That's why I followed you. That's why I let you save me. I feel it in my chest. I've never felt at home in that trailer. My family, Benjamin, they're my home, but in this chaos, you made me feel safe. I love you for that. I barely know you, but it's true. Don Carlos's eyes softened, the dark intensity transforming into quiet reverence. He lifted her chin gently with fingers that had seen war and peace alike. I hear you, Ari. I feel it too. Whatever comes next, we face it together. I promise. The world outside, so violent mere hours ago, seemed to pause. The gunfire, shattered glass, snow, and blood receded into memory, leaving only the quiet splendor of frost-laden branches glittering under moonlight, a cathedral of ice and silver standing witness to a fragile but fierce bond. Behind them, the others found their own moments of grace. Sarah flexed her knuckles on the wheel, the weight of the night slowly easing from her shoulders. Naomi closed her eyes and drew a deep, slow breath, letting the quiet settle like a balm. Bert squeezed Honey's hand with renewed resolve. Benjamin and Ari leaped into each other, a tentative sense of safety wrapping around them. Somewhere the forest exhaled, releasing its tension with the falling snow. The convoy had survived, and in that moment, suspended between night and dawn, violence and safety,
Each heart, each pulse, each whispered breath became a testament to endurance, courage, and the fragile promise of tomorrow.